Good morning, my students. Today is Monday, March 23rd. I hope everybody is doing well and staying healthy. I definitely miss seeing you all and being in the classroom and teaching you these lessons in person. I did discover this new program which will allow me to teach my lessons to you with audio. So I hope you find this more helpful than the lessons I posted last week. Today, I'm going to be reviewing how to find the area of parallelograms and triangles. And the reason I chose this to review is because the day I taught it in class before we left, about 15 students were absent that day. So most of you missed this lesson, and I felt that you can probably use a refresher on it, being that I am now speaking it to you through an automated system here. So my first question that I have for you is, what is area? Area is the number of square units inside a figure. And that's why we label all of our area answers as the units to the second power, which means squared, or square units. A parallelogram is a four-sided figure, which is also called a quadrilateral, with both pairs of opposite sides parallel and equal. Today, the first thing I'm going to talk about is finding the area of a parallelogram. A parallelogram is very similar to a rectangle and a square in terms of the fact that the parallelogram is a four-sided figure, opposite sides are parallel and equal, except the one difference is that the parallelogram, these sides slant, and I will show you a picture of it right now. So as you see, the opposite sides do slant. The dimensions are called base and height, not length and width, as you do in a square and a rectangle. The formula is area equals base times height. A stands for area, B stands for base, and H stands for height. And most of the time, you will see me writing this formula when we calculate the problems. So our first problem says find the area of a parallelogram whose base is 15 inches and whose height is 12 inches. So here is my formula. Here is my picture of my parallelogram. My base is 15, my height is 12. So A stands for area. So I'm going to write the area equals 15 times 12. And I'm going to move that underneath the formula. And then on my calculator, and I would encourage you to use calculators on this entire unit, I'm going to multiply 15 times 12, and the area is 180, and I'm going to move that right underneath this. And I label that as either inches to the second power or square inches. So I can show you the two ways that you can label it. It's a little challenging for me to label it like this when I type. So most of the times you're going to see me having it written as 180 SQ period IN period, which stands for square inches. So either way is fine. You can choose whichever one works for you. Here's another problem which I worked out for you. In this problem, the base, I need to get rid of this line, and I'll come back to that in a minute. The base is 13 and the height is 14, so I did A equals 13 times 14, and when I worked that out, I multiplied that on my calculator, I got 182 square inches. Okay, in this case, I give you the area. The area is 120 square inches. That means there's 120 square inches inside of this parallelogram, and I give you the base, and I ask you to find the height. So here's what you're going to do. You're going to replace the area, and under A, you're going to put 120, and under B, you're going to put 12, and you don't know the height. How can we figure out 120 equals 12 times what number? Well, on our calculator, we could divide 120 by 12, and that gives us 10. So we know 10 inches is going to be the height. And you can either choose to write that as such, or you can write H equals 10 inches. You must label it though. So when you're finding a missing dimension as a base and a height, you label it as just inches or centimeters or meters, whatever the unit is. But when you're finding area, area is how many square units are inside. So you must have these squared. Let's move on to the next one. Find the base of a parallelogram whose area is 120 square inches and whose height is 15. So under my formula, what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace the A with 120. 120. I do not know the base, and the height is 15. So how am I going to figure out 120 equals 15 times what number? I'm going to divide 120 by 15, and I get 8. So that means 8 inches equals the base. Okay. In number 5, and I'm going to delete these just so I can walk you through it, I'm going to find the height of a parallelogram. The area is 300 square inches and the base is 20. So I replace A with 300. So under A, I'm going to put 300. I know the base is 20, so B is 20, and I don't know the height. How am I going to find the height is I'm going to divide 300 by 20, and when I divide 300 divided by 20, that gives me 15. So that means 20 times 15 does equal 300. The height is 15 inches. Here, and I'm going to delete these because I want to walk you through it, we have to find the base and the height ourselves. So in order to do that, I'm going to grab my pen, and I have to figure out how many units across, how long this base is. And the best way to do it is see how many numbers I can write across this. So there are 6 units for my base, and my height, how many numbers can I write going top to bottom? And it's 8. So the area is base times height. So that means A equals 6 times 8, which is the area equals 48 square units, because I don't know the units. It didn't tell me whether it's inches or centimeters. So when you don't know the units, you use UN for units. Okay? So I worked these out for you. If you look at this, the base is 6, the height is 3. 6 times 3 is 18. In this case, 17 is not the height. The height is the dotted line. So the base times the height is 4 times 16, which is 64 square meters. A triangle is half of a parallelogram. And if we go back to a picture of a parallelogram, I will show you that. If we take this parallelogram and we actually cut it in half, as such, this is a triangle. And I apologize for not making that straighter. It's a little hard here. This is a triangle. Half of this is a triangle. So the formula for the parallelogram is base times height. The formula for a triangle is base times height divided by 2. Why do we divide by 2? Because the triangle is half of the parallelogram. So, for example, here's the formula. It's base times height divided by 2. So that means if I know the base is 12 and the height is 10, it's 12 times 10 divided by 2. So 12 times 10 is 120, and 120 divided by 2 is 60, and it's square centimeters. Here's another one that I already worked out for you. The base is 18 and the height is 12. So it's base times height divided by 2. And if you work this out and do 18 times 12 divided by 2, you get 108 square centimeters. Here, the base is 6, the height is 4. So the area equals 6 times 4 divided by 2. So that means 24 divided by 2 is 12, and it's square units. Find the area of a triangle whose base is 16 centimeters and whose height is 8. So I'm going to multiply 16 times 8 divided by 2. And on my calculator, when I do that, so 16 times 8 is 128, divided by 2 is 64. So the answer is the area is 64 square centimeters. Base times height divided by 2. And again, the reason we divide by 2 is because it's half of a parallelogram. This, same thing. It's a triangle. The formula is base times height divided by 2. So the formula is 20 times 12 divided by 2. So if I do 20 times 12, I get 240, and 240 divided by 2 is 120 square centimeters. Or again, you can choose to write the answer as centimeters to the second power. But again, when I type this, it's a little harder for me to do exponents. So that's why I was choosing to do the SQ. Okay, the last part of this lesson, we are almost done, is when you are given the area of a triangle and you're asked to find the missing dimension, whether it be the base or the height. I actually created this formula for you. It's 2a equals bh, and we use this formula only when we're finding the missing base or height of a triangle and you're given the area. So here's how we use this formula. 2a means 2 times the area equals the base times the height. That's what that means. So for example, 2a equals bh. I was given the area and I was told that the area is 140. So that means 2 times, I'm going to move this up a little bit so you can see it. So 2 times 140 is equal to 14 times the height. So here's what I did. I replaced the area with 140, I replaced the base with 14, and now I have to figure out the height. So how am I going to do that? I'm going to multiply 2 times 140, which gives me 280. 280 equals 14 times the height. How do I figure out 280 equals 14 times what number? Well, I have to divide 280 by 14, and that gives me 20. So the height equals 20. How do I label that? Inches. Because remember, when you're finding a base or a height, it's just inches or centimeters or whatever the unit may be. Here's another one just like the one we just did. Again, you're given the area. It says find the base of a triangle whose area is 200 square inches and whose height is 20. So we're going to use this formula. 2 times the area equals the base times the height. 2a means 2 times the area. So the area, it says, was 200. The base, we don't know. And the height is 20. So 2 times 200 is 400. 400 equals the base times 20. So I have to figure out 20 times what number gives me 400. And the way I do that is I divide 400 by 20, and that gives me, so what is 400 divided by 20? That gives me 20. So that means the base equals 20, and I must label it, and I go back and look at my problem, and it's just inches. 2 times the area equals the base times height. I multiplied the area by 2, and then I divided that number by the missing, by the number that's by the height. So I divided 400 by the height, by the dimension I was given. And that helped me to find my